So hey team, welcome to the session on Coffee with Prab. And today we have Mr. Anant Shrivastava. And Mr. Anant required no need of introduction. He's already a well-known name in the information security industry, known for his offensive and defensive skills. And he has total 15 plus year of experience. And it is really a great honor for us to have Mr. Anant in this session. Anand bhai, thank you so much for taking out your time for this particular session. I'm really, really happy that you are part of this session today. And I'm sure from this session, we can able to provide more and more inputs to our, the upcoming aspiring candidates who basically making their career in cybersecurity, which is include your red teaming, pen testing, and all that. Thank you so much, Anand bhai. And when it comes to Anand contribution, he did a lot of contribution in the past. Passively, I monitor his success in the lot of conferences like NullCon, Garage for Hackers, Null Bhopal, OWASP Bhopal. Along with that, a lot of international conferences like Black Hat, DEF CONs, and all that. He also known for his lot of authorships in a lot of documents on OWASP and ASVS. And this is all from my side. And hi Anand sir, how are you? I'm sure like thoda sa main kaam par raha hu. So thanks for giving your time for this particular session.
Hey, Prab, the pleasure is all mine. Thanks for the lovely introduction.
So Anand sir, like we receive lot of I've seen lot of trend in the cybersecurity which is changed in last 10 year. There was a career shift from ethical hacking to the pen testing, and now there's a new trend is happening about red teaming. So I always receive this kind of a receive a lot of questions on how to make a career in cybersecurity, or especially in the red teaming or pen testing. So do you wish to share your experience on this area?
Okay, so yeah, like you said, the recent trend is red teaming.
Yeah.
The new catchword which is going to soon start replacing red teaming would be adversary simulation or emulation kind of side. Now, effectively, one thing that we all have to keep in mind is that now the whole field is a professional area.
Hmm,
Earlier, when we started, it used to be a hobby, so
hmm,
there were different approaches towards learning things. Now
hmm.
the trend is changing where this is now a viable career alternative and career option, to be honest. And people
Okay.
are basically willing to make this as a career option. What that means is that all of these fields that we are talking about, say red teaming, pen testing, all of these,
Hmm,
uh, there is a trend going on where people are looking for a structured learning methodology that, hey, can you give me 10 pointers? I will just learn those 10 pointers and I'll be eligible for a job. This is where there is a slight miscommunication that is going on. Like I said, the field is becoming a career option. It is not yet at the part where it is a full-fledged career option and there is
hmm,
a full-fledged learning paths around it. So we are still in that zone where you need to do a lot of hands-on stuff on your own. It's
hmm,
not going to be that you can learn A, B, and C and
hmm,
you are a fully qualified information security professional. That's something that does not happen. Like for example, if you compare it with say engineering, or if you compare it with say doctor,
hmm.
rather the MA, what is that, the whole doctor, the journey of a doctor.
PhD and
uh,
doctor, yeah.
yeah, so there is a defined path that if you want to learn this, join this college, this degree, and once you are done with this degree, MBBS, yeah, sorry, I was missing that name.
Yeah.
So once you're done with MBBS, you are in that position where you can treat patients.
Hmm,
We are not in that zone. So
hmm,
certifications or learning paths are there.
hmm,
Everyone is trying to figure out and fiddle around with this, that okay, what can I teach others so that they become competent to be the said professional. So right now, I don't say that yes, just follow these three things and you're done.
hmm,
What I would definitely recommend is basically try and understand what are you getting into,
hmm,
because red teaming, as you said, as the keyword, is not something which is on its own day one profession.
Hmm.
To become a red teamer, you'll have to do a lot of other things beforehand.
Hmm.
So, to give a context for audience, uh, in information security domain, there are multiple job perspectives that are there. Of all the job perspectives, there are two major perspectives that come up, or rather three:
Hmm.
offensive security, defensive security, and compliance. So if we
Yes.
leave aside compliance and defensive security, we're talking about offensive security here.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the offensive space, the approach is that you act like an attacker
Hmm.
and you try to emulate how an attacker would attack the environment. Now, this is where the way it started was, can we automate it? So the
Hmm.
way of automating it was via different tool set that is there. So there are n number of tools. There is OpenVAS, which
Enter
is
the
the
IP
open
and
source
scan the
one.
system.
Yeah, there is Nessus. There's n number of other tools which are scanning tools.
Yeah.
What you do with the automated scanner is basically what you call as vulnerability assessment.
Hmm.
Now, the moment you start looking at it from from an actual human being doing stuff around it, or a semi-automated approach, this is where you move from the realm of vulnerability assessment. Now,
Hmm.
this is where again there are two parts of it. One,
Hmm.
you are contracted as an external person to look
Hmm.
at the environment and tell us what is wrong in our environment.
Hmm.
It will be a time boxed approach where you'll have a fixed time frame. So
Hmm.
you basically run some checks, you do some manual analysis.
Hmm.
This is what is called penetration testing.
Okay.
Once you're done with these two, once you've explored the automated analysis, the manual analysis, that's
Hmm.
when you realize that there are still avenues by which an attacker can come inside.
Okay.
Scenarios like, what if I have a malicious insider?
Okay.
What if someone does not tells me that I'm doing an assessment and
Hmm.
randomly attacks me everywhere?
Hmm.
Within an organizational hierarchy, generally what happens is, once an organization becomes aware that they have some security weakness, there
True.
are two approaches that they take. They either fix it, or they decide, hey, this is not a big issue right now, we'll fix it
Hmm.
either later or we will
Hmm.
not fix it. What if someone attacks those endpoints which are deemed not fixing right now or
Hmm.
won't fix? So
True.
these sort of scenarios, which are edge cases in general senses, but are realistic scenarios, because of an actual attacker is not going to look at your sheet and say, okay, yeah, these are 10 things you have said that you're not going to fix, so I'm not
Hmm.
going to attack here. Rather, they're going to attack just there. So
Okay.
this is an area which was missing. How do you explore this? So this is where people started the process, which was red teaming. The term actually came from the military background, where the whole idea is that the country hires consultants and basically tell them, hey, devise a plan how you're going to screw up my country, whatever you can do. So they're given an open path and they're asked to devise a plan,
Uh-huh.
and then the team works towards fixing those things. So a red teamer is supposed to do exactly that for an organization. Your
Okay.
infrastructure, your web applications, they need to come up with weird scenarios. They need to come up with n number of ways in which they can screw up the environment, and then
Okay.
they need to validate it. So ideally, a red teaming engagement should not be a time boxed assessment.
True.
A company would be hired that, hey, I want you to do red teaming. You have the task, you go ahead and do it. There are some things which you are not going to allow a red teamer to do, but
Hmm.
mostly it will be open slate. Like, for example, things that you will not allow your red teamer to do:
Hmm.
stalk your employees on their personal Gmail IDs or their personal IDs and
Breach of
hack their
privacy. Yeah.
personal accounts. So
Yeah.
that kind of stuff is what you're going to refrain from doing. But other than that, you are going to give them a clean slate and an open area. Do whatever you want to do. Try
Hmm.
and gain access into the environment.
Okay.
Now, the reason I gave you this context, now we know what red teamer is supposed to do.
Hmm.
If you want to be a red teamer,
Hmm.
what do you need to learn now?
That was my next question only. Like, what skill is basically required? Because there is a lot
Yep.
of assumption, there is a lot of misconception about the red teaming and pen testing we have. Is, do we need to know scripting? Do we need to know programming? I have a 20 year of experience in the IT. Can I move to red teaming? It is something is a money making. So what is a skill? What is a skill is required? Or do you have any kind of a, any content on YouTube, or anything you would like to suggest to the aspirants that, okay, you can go through this process and you can get the idea of to become a red teamer, because no one is perfect in security, because
Yep.
100%
Yep.
security itself is a myth. So no
Yeah.
one can be a
Agreed.
pro in red teaming and all that, because every day new exploit, new TTP comes, and it is very difficult for anyone to have a up to date idea about the attack techniques and all that. So what is a skill, Anand, required for to become a red teamer or a pen tester? If you talk about the current scenario.
Yep. So there are a couple of things here. One, let's talk about what are the skills that are required. So anything that is required to do vulnerability assessment or pen testing is sort of a baseline requirement for being a red teamer. What I
Hmm,
mean by that, as part of vulnerability assessment, you're basically running tools and analyzing the output. So you
hmm,
should be able to validate the output that you have received. So if
hmm.
someone says, or if a tool says your website has a cross-site scripting attack on it, can you validate it? And when you try to validate it, what are the hurdles that you face? So with when it comes to web application security, when it comes to say mobile security side of things, I am not just going to give resources around red teaming only. I'll talk about pen testing resource also, because people will need to know pen testing before they get into red teaming style.
True.
So for say web applications or say mobile applications, the best resources that you have right now are the web application security testing guide and the mobile
Hmm,
security testing guide, which are
hmm.
created by OWASP. So
Okay,
they
but before
have
that,
basically,
anything
yeah,
like if the person having a non-programming background, or like if you talk about, there are some folks who don't have a BSc experience, a BSc IT or
yeah.
BCA and all that. So what is a baby step for them? Like if you talk
See,
about from a zero,
first,
yeah.
yeah, if you don't have any programming background,
Hmm,
or you don't have much experience with computers, the way I used to suggest people is start exploring what is there in your system. So my approach is always a slow process. It's not like you go for 3 months and you're done with everything. So it's a slow process. Start understanding what you're dealing with. And it does not means that you need to be a Linux user or a Mac user or a Windows user.
hmm,
Whatever operating system you're using, start understanding how your computer is ticking. So for
okay.
example, when someone says, okay, I am a Windows user,
Hmm,
how does Windows actually boots and gives you the whole interface? What happens when you click a start button and search for something? What are the places where it is searching for? Start with those baby questions. So these are questions. The answers are going to be very complicated, very
true,
lengthy, very complicated answers. The
true.
point is you need to start digging into it.
Hmm,
uh, if you ask me a core skill that everyone needs,
yeah.
that core skill is going to be two parts. One, patience to read as much content as you can,
Hmm,
and two, patience to troubleshoot. In
okay.
our area, you will find scenarios where things are not going to work. Whatever tool you use, whatever script you use, whatever uh, things you are attempting, you will find a blog post which will say, hey, you do these 5 steps and it works. And in your environment, it is not going to work.
Different. It cannot be copy
take me
paste.
take me on a number percentage, I would say 60 to 70% times it is not going to work. Things would
Hmm,
have changed, environment would be different, there would be differences.
hmm,
The patience to actually try and figure out what could be wrong
hmm.
is one essential thing, and this comes on the back of being able to read as much content as you can.
So what is the
Because
content mean? Like when we're talking about the
so
content,
yeah,
like what is the content?
when I say reading skill, what I'm saying is, let's say you took a tool. Let's take a very basic tool. Nmap is a tool which everyone would use for post
Yes.
scanning.
Hmm,
Let's say for your environment, Nmap is taking too long a time to scan one particular IP address.
True.
What is going on? Now, to understand this, you will have to start looking at what are the options in Nmap, what different options I can try, how can I get more details about it. Now, to get this, you will start with a basic Google search, like how
True.
can I get more details about Nmap scan, and
Hmm.
then there will be n number of content that you will get. You need to be in that zone where you are not hesitant. Okay, I'm not going to go after 5 links, or I'm not, I need the right answer in the first link. You will end up reading 5 to 10 links or 20 links, and you
True.
will then find the answer that you're looking for. And when you attempt it, you will realize that's not the answer. So you will
True.
again go back and read more. So
True.
this, the patience to keep reading, the patience to keep taking notes, storing that information that you've gained,
Hmm.
which could come back and be useful for you at a later point.
Hmm.
That's an essential skill. The reason I said this as an essential skill, because this is one skill that I found lacking in a large chunk of people.
That is the same thing, because if I suppose I want to do the port scanning, I will go to YouTube and see how that Prab is doing the Nmap scanning, copy the step by step process. But
Yep,
one important thing is that they don't understand what is the process behind the scanning. If I'm doing a
exactly,
port scan in terms
exactly.
of TCP scan, fin scan, first understand how the fin scan works,
Yep, yep.
understand TCP scan works, then only you can run the tool, because tool can change tomorrow, so you should be
Obviously,
sticking to the
obviously.
process. So
Yep.
process understanding
So
is also very important. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. Once you have the patience to start reading stuff and
Mm,
give time to reading things, that's
mm,
where things like the guides that I was talking about, they'll be helpful. Because when I'm talking about web application security testing guide, it's a 350-page document. The
true.
problem that I've seen is people are like, okay, I can go and read it, but right
Mm,
now tell me 5 things that I do, and I start getting bug bounty. That's not
exactly.
the approach that you need to take. The
Mm,
And this is where the fun part would be. You used the term red teaming,
mm,
and the way, so I was thinking about this, and the way you have to look at it is, red teaming starts where bug bounty ends.
true.
Whatever you can do in bug bounty is nowhere close to what you're
To
going
red
to
TV.
experience in red teaming. Red
Mm.
teaming basically is far more in depth, far greater coverage is required. So
So any
knowing,
difference is there between pen testing and red teaming, or this is the
yeah,
trend
there's a
people?
there's a big difference. There's a big difference. People always confuse these two terms because
Mm,
it's in the best interest of industry to convolute these two terms, so that you can sell pen testing in terms of red teaming, or you can sell red teaming in terms of pen testing, and vice versa.
mm,
Mostly pen testing is sold in terms of red teaming because red teaming gives you more money. The
exactly. So Anand,
difference
if
is,
you can
yeah,
able to share 5 minutes on that red teaming versus pen
yep,
testing, it can be a great awareness for the
yep.
our users.
So
Yeah.
like I said, pen testing is generally a time boxed assessment. You are
Mm,
given a task, you're given a very specific task that, hey, find flaws in my application. So I'm going to take a web application example. Find
mm,
flaws in my application. The way pen testing operates is a mixture of automation and manual. So a couple of scanners are going to be run, and then you're going to basically see if you can, sorry, if you can find flaws by manually inspecting the web application. So you're going to try in different kind of payloads at different places. You're going to assume a behavior, and then you're going to validate it. Like for
true.
example, if there is a login page, and then after the login page there's a profile page, one assumption would be, what if I directly go to the profile page? Can I access it directly? So these sort of, so the whole uh, information security assessment area is about being creative with assumptions and validating those assumptions. Now, within a time boxed space, within a very defined context, if you
Mm,
do that, that's pen testing. But when
okay.
your context becomes loose, like, hey, you know what, I want to know what are the weak points in my organization.
Mm,
This is my organization name.
Mm.
Go figure out whatever you can, and you're
More like
basically given
unstructured.
an open hand. Yep.
More like
You are
unstructured.
not. Exactly. The other difference would be, mostly when you're doing pen testing, you would ask for exceptions. Like, for example, if the web application is sitting behind Cloudflare, you can basically go and ask the client that, hey, give me an exception on Cloudflare, so my traffic directly goes to your application. And there's a valid justification behind it.
True.
I am doing a time boxed assessment. I have small amount of time to figure out as many flaws as I can. Remove the barriers for me so that I can actually inspect your application directly.
End to end.
I'll be able to give more result.
Mm.
Whereas when you're doing a red teaming assessment, you're not going to ask for exceptions. Your defense team might not even know that you are there or you're
Mm.
doing some assessment. You are also assessing the response of your blue team, how
Okay.
exactly the blue team responds. So if they see a phishing attempt, so as part of your red teaming engagement, you might have to send some fake emails. So if,
True.
let's say, your organization is abc123.com,
Mm.
you can maybe send a phishing email with abcl23.com domain. If your blue team sees this, if someone reports this, what does your blue team do? A lot of times what you will face is the blue
Mm.
team goes about and reports that domain, and the domain gets blocked by the domain provider.
Yep.
So all these situations are realistic scenarios that will happen in red teaming, because you are an adversary to them. You are not
Exactly.
a known entity analyzing the system. You are an attacker who are
Mm.
doing attack on the system. The
Yeah.
system is going to be fully tuned to throttle your attacks. You
True.
have to deal with it.
Yep.
So with red teaming, this is why I keep saying, with red teaming, your experience requirement is far bigger compared to a pen tester.
And you need to be very mature, because you
Yes.
should be very careful with your testing process and all that. It should not
Yep.
disrupt,
Yep.
because sometimes we have a compliance and we have some kind of a regulatory requirement. Definitely we have a free hand, but it
Yep.
doesn't mean that, okay,
Yep. Yeah,
we should.
obviously you cannot do a full-fledged blast on the website or on the network and disable them,
Mm.
but that's the fun with red teaming. You might actually be hired to do exactly that.
True.
You might end up in a situation where a company comes up and says, hey, you know what, every single DDoS protection measures that the world can think of, I have implemented all of them. I want you to take up your biggest and baddest DDoS gun that you have, throw it
And
at me.
exploit.
I want
Yes.
to see what happens. Because the way it works is, defense is also a factor of buying products.
True.
Sometimes the company might end up saying, hey, I spent a few million. I want to see whether they actually work or not.
And how
Instead of
secure it
when
is.
an attacker, yeah, exactly. Instead of when an attacker actually does it, I want to test it. So you might end up in a situation where you are asked to do those damages. And
True.
that's the fun tests that come up. Like,
And that is the
there
second
have
point
been,
you covered, that, okay,
yeah,
creative skills or patience you need to be have. So in
exactly,
this case, the patience
exactly.
is required. That's second most
Yep, yep.
important thing.
So I've had a scenario where an organization was like, you know what? I have implemented N number of security on my email systems.
Mm.
I want you to create a payload which can bypass my email systems. I'm going to give you access to a mailbox of my environment so you can see what goes through. I'm going to
Mm.
give you access to a Windows desktop where you
Mm.
can exploit that particular payload. I
True.
am
Okay.
giving you 6 months time frame. Figure out an exploit which bypasses my AV, which bypasses my spam filters, which bypasses my what you say, email gateways, and reaches the endpoint. I
Okay.
want to know that. And those were fun tests. You basically were given a free hand. So we were
Mm.
creating payloads left, right, and center. And we explored every single scenario that we could think of. One or two payloads were able to go through. And then they
Okay.
basically were like, okay, this went through. Now this goes to my vendor, and they
Mm.
need to start adding protections against it. And then we were asked to, okay, check again, does your payload now goes through?
So changing the
So
payload and yeah.
exactly. So the payload and the whole craft around whether your domain survives the whole 15 days or 20 days of attack, all
Hmm.
of those are the fun and creative aspects of red teaming. but
Okay.
but to get to a point where you understand why my payload was blocked, you need to be in that position where you understand how the payload mechanism works, how the
Works.
payload building mechanism works, and how the payload detection works. So at the red team level, you are basically playing a blue teamer as well as a red teamer. So
True.
you're building the payload and you're preempting what a blue teamer is going to detect.
True.
So
You think like
that's,
you
yeah,
have to think like a defensive guy. Okay, what is the best way they can
exactly.
able to stop us? And according to that, you need to create an
Yep,
exploits and you need to modify the exploits.
yep,
So
yep.
coming to this exploit part only, so is it required any programming language even for the non-IT
Uh,
professional who want to make a career in this?
See, you can
Honest
go,
advice.
yeah, you can go a bit in the field without having programming exposure.
Okay.
It's not like you cannot do anything in this field.
Huh.
My advice around this has changed a bit.
Hmm.
Earlier, my advice used to be you cannot do anything in this field if you don't know programming. You need to be able to, especially in the red teaming area, you need to know
Huh.
programming because you'll be customizing payloads left, right, and center.
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
thing that has changed is we are moving from the art side of equation to the science side of equation. Like I
Oh.
said, the field is moving towards being a established field, which
Hmm.
means newer tool set is getting developed, more
Hmm.
professional tooling is getting in picture,
Hmm.
where the job of creating the complex payloads is
Hmm.
slowly getting handed over to professionals who are basically doing this job for making money. They're building tools who are basically claiming that they are going to do it.
Hmm.
Now, like I said, you can go so far. There is going to be a layer in the beginning of the setup
Hmm.
where these automated tools are going to be your savior. You can use
Hmm.
those automated tools, you can build payloads which are going to bypass a lot of AVs. But you will reach a point where you need the extra creativity.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
for
true.
example, I'll give you a very simple example. There are these AV, which are AI based AVs.
Hmm.
Now, what they're doing is they're basically looking at every single payload that comes up in the world and they're
Hmm.
trying to build protections against them. Now, they have to run on systems which are used by users.
Hmm.
So, they have to be creative about it. Now, the process by which an an attacker's payload hides itself in the processes and tries to do a number of malicious activities
Hmm.
are also some of the processes which are very similar to how the gaming engines operate.
Okay.
So there came a point. I think this happened 3 years back. There was a
Hmm.
fun example. So there came a point when, if you have this specific AV on your system,
Hmm.
you can't play a certain set of games. Those games
Hmm.
will slow down to crawl because the AV was adding protections against those games.
Hmm. Avast, I believe,
Then
know.
no, it was not AWS. It was one of those silence or those
Okay.
newer AI variants of
Uh,
antivirus.
uh, uh.
So they got a lot of complaints about it. So they built a check inside their system.
Hmm.
If the DLLs or if the binaries contain these strings,
Hmm.
do not add protections on them, so they can
Oh,
operate at full speed. Now, the moment this was figured out, all you had to do was in your payload add those strings. The AV will not
bypass.
add protections and would allow you to go through.
That's true. So we
This
can
is
able
not
to
a
evade the
conventional,
evade.
exactly. This is not a conventional way of bypassing it. No one would have actually sat down that, hey, the games could be the answer to my trouble. Someone,
True.
probably a pen tester or a red teamer who was also a gamer,
Hmm.
ended up realizing my games are not getting blocked, but they use similar techniques. So they applied the same logic here. That correlation, that capability where they were in that position to deduce that this is happening
Hmm.
and able to map that skill or that say the strings from that
Hmm.
binary to the binary that they had.
True.
This would require the next level of skills.
Huh,
So
if even you can see a lot of tools are there which people used to say hacking, suppose email spoofing and all that. It was introduced for the
yep,
functionality reason only. It is all
exactly,
about what
exactly.
is your thought process and how you use that against the offensive practice,
Yep,
like
yep.
SMTP relay and
So
all that.
there are going to be tools that are going to be available, but if
Hmm.
you take the journey from say 1 to 100,
Yeah.
you'll be able to reach till maybe 20, 30 with
Hmm.
the assistance of tools only.
Hmm.
But the moment you leave the crutches of tool and you start getting to a point where you're understanding the system, you're
True.
fiddling around with system, you
Hmm.
move from 30 to 70.
Hmm.
And then however creative you are, that's the
Hmm.
journey from 70 to 100.
So creativity, like at one particular point is basically necessity for this profile, I believe,
Yes,
because
at one
more you
point,
think about, yeah.
yep. But look at it this way. This is where I've started not discouraging people who are not
Hmm.
interested in programming,
Hmm.
because this is becoming a established field.
Hmm.
We keep talking about that there are so many job openings.
Ji,
No
yeah.
one is getting hired for the jobs because
Hmm.
everyone is looking for all of these skills in that one package. The problem that comes is, and there's that very funny image where it is more of like you're having a Godzilla versus King Kong kind of a match in the interview,
Yeah,
but
I've
when
seen,
it
yeah.
comes to the actual job, you're
Job,
basically
yeah,
just having
absolutely.
a pew pew gun and you're throwing water guns.
Yes.
So that's the reality that everyone needs to understand. There are going to be jobs which do not require a lot of skills.
Hmm.
Entry level people can actually be there.
Hmm.
You also have to understand it is so the field is like Bollywood.
Hmm.
In Bollywood, you have 1 million people trying to become the lead actor.
Hero, yeah.
The
Yes.
lead actor gets paid a bulk of money,
Yes,
not the
that's true.
side actors, not the
Yes,
people
that's
who are in the crowd. But
yeah,
do need people in the crowd. It's
true.
not going to be that there are not going to be people in the crowd.
You
There
need
is
people
going
there.
to be a set of jobs which need people in the crowd, which
Hmm.
need basic skills to get stuff done. Like for
True.
example, a very basic example, someone whose whole job is going to be that you have to take this IP address list, put it into a scanner, click this, extract the report, put it in an Excel sheet, share it with someone else, and they are going to do the next set of jobs. These kind of roles are going to be there.
Hmm.
They don't need you to have programming skills, and it's a viable money earning opportunity. It's not going to be a huge money. These are
True.
entry level jobs. They're going to give you some money. You're going to survive for some year, after which if you want to continue in this field in the higher steps in the ladder, this is
Mm-hmm.
where you'll have to gain more skills. So the entry barrier is lesser now. You can enter the field without knowing programming by getting into jobs which don't require programming. But you got to understand that if you are thinking that, hey, I am going to be that multi-millionaire by just being in this entry level job, that's not going to happen.
True.
If you want to earn more, if you want to get into those high profile roles where you see people talking in conferences, delivering sessions around, hey, how I hacked a whole country or how I owned the entire 500 Fortune 500 company,
Hmm.
that's where you'll see creativity is still a requirement. Till you get to a point where the field becomes a science, everything is documented, everything is structured, and there is automation around everything. Till you
Hmm.
reach that point, creativity is a requirement to reach that final mile.
So
So,
any resources
yeah,
you would like to recommend, Anand? Like
okay.
like okay, these are
So,
the resources. Like any free resources, because
yep,
as I
yep,
said, that this video is more like a non-profitable, and we would
yep,
like to give
yep.
a free education to everyone. So because there's a
So,
lot of misconception we have about Udemy, YouTube's, and all that. So do you wish
yeah.
to share any your
So,
experience about the material? Yeah.
bunch of things around that. when it comes to certifications, I don't generally recommend taking certifications. And my logic is very simple. Certifications are expensive. I do not recommend people getting certifications until and unless it is becoming a very bothersome task. And the way I deduct a bothersome task is, if you have applied to 200 or 100 or plus companies, and a large chunk of them, say 50 plus of them, have
mm,
rejected your resume because you do not have a certification,
mm,
that's the point where you may think about taking that certification. But ideally, certification should not be taken to get into a particular job. The
mm,
organizations, if they want you to have a certain skill set, should be funding the certifications. And that's kind of what has started happening also. A large
mm,
number of organizations have now started doing this, that hey, we like your skill, you get in. As soon as you are in, I need you to have these three certifications. Go
mm.
prepare for them and take those certifications.
Makes sense.
So
Companies
that's
makes sense.
kind of a change that is happening in the industry. It is
Mm,
going to take some time, but it is there. So certifications is not what I recommend. But
mm,
then the thing that you got to understand is, I am not recommending you to take certification,
mm,
but that basically means your job is a bit harder. You have to
mm,
prove your skills.
mm,
With a certification, generally the idea is that, hey, if I have this certification, I know a bit about this. Although it's not exactly that you know everything about it, but it
mm.
tells the interviewer that you know something about it.
Okay.
What will happen is, if you don't have a certification, you will need to prove your capabilities,
Huh.
which is via your blog posts, via your previous work, via your
Mm,
experience, via your
mm,
learnings. So whatever you learn, generally
mm,
what I recommend people is, see, in terms of offensives, there are two areas where people generally, or rather three areas where people can explore. There is
mm,
network, there is web, and there is mobile and IoT space. All three of them have different entry barriers around it. For web applications, it's the least entry barrier area because you can very quickly get started with web applications. For
mm,
web applications, things like I said, OWASP testing guide, then burpsuit, which is a commercial tool, has a very good academy available, where
mm,
you can basically test around all sorts of web application related bugs.
mm,
OWASP Zap is a free tool that is available. It
mm,
has every single feature that you can think of in burpsuit, which is the paid tool. It has
mm,
every single feature in there.
mm.
You just have to sit down and play around with it. So some
Okay.
experimentation is going to be required. See, if we are removing the certifications, we have to add self learning in that place. So
So,
experiment self learning is going to be there. For
mm,
say web applications, the OWASP testing guide is my first recommendation. If
mm,
that's not something that you want, like going full-fledged into reading a very big document, what I would suggest is Portswigger's Web Academy is a good place. It has structured learning content, and then with each content there is playground where you can play around.
okay.
Right now it's free. I'm hoping
Mm,
it is going to remain free, so that's a
mm,
resource that people can use. uh, Besides that, uh, let's say we talk about mobile. Again, mobile,
mm,
OWASP has a good set of resources.
mm.
And then network is an area where
Lot of
resources are
opportunity.
less in terms of
Mm,
written content. What I
mm,
have found is, there are a lot of YouTubers who have been doing good job.
mm,
One of them being the IPSec uh, YouTube channel, IPPSec YouTube channel.
mm, mm,
The reason I recommend that channel versus any other channel is
mm,
because the person has actually taken time to do exactly what we were talking about. Not just saying type this nmap command and it gets done, but actually explaining what is going on in the background. So
okay.
now again, we need practice environments. For
Mm,
mobile, again, when you go into OWASP mobile security guide, there are n number of playgrounds and random APKs that you can find, which are vulnerable applications. So you can play
mm,
around with them. With network, this is where the trouble comes. You don't find a lot of network which are vulnerable and you can play around with them. So
okay.
hack the box, uh, hack this site, and there are a couple of other sort of vendors who are basically coming up with sort of a freemium model. So they give some things for free, some things as
Hmm.
paid.
Hmm.
My recommendation is play around with those. Now, there are going to be two sets of people. Some who don't have compute power at their hands. They have to rely on sites like these to give them the environment where they can play.
Like the box
There
and
are
all that.
going to be, yeah, hack the box and others. There are going to be other set of people who have compute power in their hands. Like, for example, we were talking about people who are freshers or people who are like 10, 20 years experienced. They're
Hmm.
also freshers for us. For this field, they're freshers. But the difference is one person is there who might not be able to spend on resources buying
Hmm.
compute power. Whereas the other person might be like, yeah, if I need to get a 32 core machine, I can get a 32 core machine.
Hmm.
That's not a problem. So if you have
Hmm.
that kind of people,
Hmm.
there are a large number of vulnerable environments that you can set up in your own sort of
Systems and all that.
machines. So
Hmm.
VulnHub is a good resource,
Hmm.
VULNHUB, which
Hmm.
gives you sort of VMs that you can download. And
Hmm.
those VMs allow you to play around with them. These VMs would have network services
Whatever
running in
labs,
them,
yeah.
and you can play around with them. Uh, for red teaming purposes, there is a very good resource called Detection Lab.
Detection
Uh,
lab, yeah.
what Detection Lab has is it has a set of scripts which allows you to build a complete Windows AD environment
Hmm.
with all the detection mechanisms pre-built. So you have
Okay.
AD, you have a client, and you have a whole monitoring setup. So
Hmm.
what I was talking about that you put a payload in, and then you
Hmm.
see how your monitoring system is reacting to that payload.
And we have a lab already who does for us, like, we can use that
Yep,
lab for that. Yeah.
exactly. So a detection lab is basically that setup, but detection lab requires you to have compute power at your end.
Okay.
Now, this is where things have started to change a bit for students.
Hmm.
Uh, I I found that a large number of students are not aware of this, but there are free compute resources that most of the organizations provide to students.
Okay.
So there's a GitHub student pack. If you
Hmm.
enroll for it, the enrollment requires you to have a valid ID card. And if you have a student email ID, that's even easier.
Okay.
You can enroll for GitHub student pack. What that does is it gives you a GitHub Pro account on one side.
Hmm.
Plus, it has tie up with, I think, around 20, 30 different vendors.
Hmm.
So it has a tie up with Namecheap. It gives you a free domain. It has a
Hmm.
tie up with Linode or I think DigitalOcean, and they give you
Hmm.
resources like compute power for say
Hmm.
one whole year. What I
Okay.
recommend students to do is leverage these resources, set up your own website, buy a domain, it's free for you, set up a server of your own,
Hmm.
build a website of your own, and see how the whole build process works.
Works.
Understand how the system operates. How do you configure Linux to serve your website? How do you configure Windows machine to serve your website? Play around with these resources. You don't have a sort of reputation to protect. Your website is not known to anyone.
Anyone, yeah.
Go ahead and keep making new website every single week, every single month. Experiment around with these free resources. Organizations want to have more people using their resources, so they're
Hmm.
making these compute resources available for free. Leverage these resources to learn, to get your
Anubhav, this is a
skills.
very important information you have shared about, because this is something which I could not find in most of the blogs and all that about, having a having a domain registration website, understand how the build process works. Because most of
Yep.
the blogs talk about, this is the website and this is how you need to hack. But what is
Yeah,
a chemistry? What is the biology behind that particular configuration?
exactly.
No one is basically and that is
Yep.
something which is missing in the coming, the current aspiration. They just are in the interest of bang 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 bang, but they don't want
Yep.
to know
Yep.
what is the process behind that.
So
But I understood,
I'll
yeah.
give you an example, a fun
Mm.
example. So there are two sites. One is called Security Headers, I think
Mm.
.com, which checks for various security headers on your website. and there is a
mm,
site called sslabs.com, which
mm.
basically checks your SSL configuration or TLS
Certificates. Yeah.
configuration.
Mm,
I basically, because I was building my own sites and stuff, I took a challenge that I am going to get A or A plus rating in both these systems.
wow.
The whole process of getting to A plus required me to fiddle with n number of settings just to understand why exactly a cipher is selected, or how exactly a cipher is selected. What
Mm,
order should I keep for my SSL TLS cipher list? Gave
mm,
me an understanding about how SSL works, how TLS works, how ciphers are chosen between a client and a server.
mm,
And so I then looked at how, okay, I am trying to do this, I'm not able to do this, how others are doing it. So I ran a
mm.
scan on Google, I ran a scan on Cloudflare, and I'm like, okay, they are able to do it this fast, how can I do that? So
Better.
these
Yeah.
interesting questions come up, and you try to find an answer for them.
Mm,
The reason why these answer finding or the whole process of exploring is important,
mm,
because you are going to commit mistakes.
mm.
What will also happen is, when you're going to look at the testing guide or these sort of official
Oh, vast
documents
spread.
to understand how attack works, you'll
Yeah.
be like, oh, you know what, this attack would have worked on my system because I did
True.
not configure this setting.
Mm,
Now you have made a correlation, how an attacker can operate and how a defender can operate, and what defenders can miss.
yes. Yeah.
So now, when you look at a website, so I was lucky to have a lot of people who were seniors to me, who would basically give me guidance around things. So one
Mm.
of the person who was my boss in 7 Safe, Devasis Mohanty, he's one of the
He's in
old
college right now. He's now in college, I believe.
I don't know if he's in Qualis, but yeah, he is one of the old veterans in this industry. So the
Uh,
fun fact with him was, he would basically stand behind me, and when the test is starting, so I was a pen tester at that time, so I would basically be doing my web application checking of
mm,
how things work, and he'll be like, Anant, check the login page. There is an SQL injection there probably, and 95% of the times his guesses would be right. So I basically sat down with him as, how can you guess? I was just exploring the website. How can you guess? So he's like,
mm.
see, I can see by extensions what's the application language that
Oh.
is used. I can see by the way the widgets are used, or the uh, color combinations are used, what
Mm,
kind of web developer we are dealing with. This is based
mm,
on the experience that I have. Based on these sort of markers, the language in use, the server response time, the icon that are in use, there are common patterns which people are going to have.
mm,
And then I started observing this for myself also.
mm,
If there's a PHP site, there are
mm,
certain things I would check immediately. And a large number of times, what has happened is, before the vulnerability scanner has picked, so let's say I start a vulnerability scanner, and parallelly I'm doing a manual assessment.
mm,
Before the vulnerability scanner has picked a flaw, I might have picked it already, because I'm
mm.
looking for targeted markers, and the
True.
vulnerability scanner is looking for a broad spectrum.
True.
So this sort of ability to start understanding and correlating those points, it is a very interesting capability that you can develop if you start paying attention to your environment. So
That's true. The
yeah,
learning what we have this from this case study is that if you talk about your boss, like who under whom you have basically worked, the one thing is that he has an understanding about the things. That is why he was
yeah,
able to do those initiatives. Otherwise, until unless you don't know the concept, until unless you don't know the
yep,
process behind that, you can't take those initiatives and all that. So
exactly.
somehow
So
base is very important.
yep, base is important. And uh, see, a lot of times people say that always find mentors, and mentors should be
Mm,
there to help, or you should be mentoring. uh, I have a certain sort of hesitation when it comes to mentors. I don't like being a mentor to someone. I don't like being someone who people can look up to.
Mm.
And I think I've made this very clear in a couple of other videos also, that don't idolize people. The reason is, when you start idolizing, you start immediately imitating all things that the person is doing.
Yeah, how Anand is doing, and I
That's,
will do that.
yeah, that's not
Creativity
how it
gone.
is. It should simply be, there are people who know more than me.
Mm.
I can ask questions to them, and if I have asked a good question, I
Mm.
will get a good answer.
True.
So I am known on null mailing list to send out links, which is like, let me tell you how to Google this.
Uh,
Most of the time, I send those links when the question asked is as simple as, if I type that question in Google search, the first link is the answer. So if that's the case, I'll send that link. If it's an interesting question, like, I've
mm.
tried this, it does not work. These are the things that I've tried.
Mm.
That's when the curiosity peaks. Okay, if it is not
Exactly.
working, why it is not working? Then I'll want to do a back and forth and interact with the person and
Good
try
point.
and
Yeah.
give things to them. And
Or if
that's
I have this
something.
Anand is there to support me, so I know, okay, Anand will help me. So that creativity is gone because I
The
know that, okay, Anand will
crutch,
going to.
exactly,
Yeah.
the crutches don't help at all. So you need to be a self-made person, and that can only happen when you basically ask questions to people when you are stuck, but you
Obvious.
do your homework on your end. You do your own checks, your own attempts. So a very good example, I'm not going to name the person, but this is a junior of mine. One fine day, I was basically at a training institute of my friend. This guy was basically pestering him, and
Mm.
I was basically asked, hey, can you look at this guy? So this guy
Mm.
was like, okay, Anant, I don't know how Linux booting works. I
Mm.
want to understand that. So
Mm.
I ended up giving him a very basic idea, and it became very clear to me that he does not have the basic knowledge that is needed. So I gave him two links that, hey, before I talk about this, you need to learn these two things.
Mm.
2 days later, the person came back. I read those two links. I went back to my question. I got the answer for my question. I went ahead and did these two extra things. Now I am stuck at how Linux init works. So now the question changed, which basically meant the person went ahead, did their own work. Now I'm curious, now I'm interested, and now I want to help this person move to the next step. I am
That's a great.
there,
Yeah.
I or any mentor for that mentor, whosoever you consider as someone you can ask questions, and they're there to remove that roadblock from your path. They're not there to take your hand and walk you in the path. They'll remove that roadblock and you have to walk your own path. So that's the way I look at it.
Oh, that's
Going
a very
back
great
to
point.
the, yeah,
That's a very good point that, okay, until unless you don't bring the curiosity, you cannot be an innovator in that case. So that's the
yep,
most
yep,
important element.
yep.
And this is
Now,
something as a case study we can use to upgrade our skills and all that. That's a
exactly,
great point.
exactly.
Yeah.
So now going back to the sort of resources that people need.
Mm.
Once you are comfortable with doing vulnerability assessment or doing pen testing, this is
Mm.
the point where you have an understanding of how network operates, how
Mm.
exploits work at a very nascent level, at a level where, okay, how can I use a metasploit command to create a payload, and
Mm.
what payload goes where, and how do I
Mm.
send the payload over. Maybe understanding of how SSH works, how RDP works, how you can make connections over network, those sort of things. Once you have that basic understanding, this is where you are now moving towards, let's say, the topic of our choice, red teaming. Now let's say you want to move towards red teaming. The job of a red teamer is to check the preparedness of an environment
Mm.
against advanced attacks. Now,
Mm.
advanced attacks, what are the advanced attacks? That's the question that comes. So
Mm.
this is where Maitre, which is a US body, has done a very good job with a
Build a framework.
tool
Yeah.
set that they have developed called Attack
Under attack.
Framework.
Attack framework.
So
Yeah.
what Attack does is it lists out all sorts of, say, various tactics and techniques that an attacker might actually use.
Hmm.
and they've classified them. The interesting bit is they also keep a tab on different APT groups. So APT is advanced persistent threat. These are like groups which are uh, operating at a much higher level, and they may be nation state actors, they may be individual bodies operating against nations, but they are highly skilled people.
Hmm.
Now APTs are generally numbered, so APT 29, APT 34, or whatever. So they
Hmm.
have the list of those APTs, and what they also then do is take that APT, and based on the analysis that different vendors have done. So Symantec would do their own analysis, McAfee would do their own analysis, Qualys would do their own, and bunch of these vendors will do their
Hmm.
own analysis.
Hmm.
So these guys would take all that analysis, these folks, and then what they'll do is they will map that to the attack framework. And what you will see is all the APTs use tactics and techniques from
Known
this
techniques.
attack framework itself.
Hmm.
It's just the sequence in which those techniques are uh,
Information
executed.
gathering, scanning,
And
gaining access to
exactly.
gaining.
So that whole process is outlined for you. Now you know how an APT is going to attack the environment. You now either can harden your environment against a specific APT. Let's say you are in a X country, and you know that your general enemies are A, B, and C. So
Hmm.
any APT that is attributed to A, B, and C, you want that to be protected against. So
Protected, yeah.
any tactics, any techniques that are used for those APTs, you want absolute protection against that.
True.
For everything else, you can wait and you can slowly get in. Or you are someone who is basically going to get attacked from everyone. Let's say
Hmm.
you're WikiLeaks, or let's say you're Snowden. There is no one who does not want to get access to the data that they have. So everyone is going to attack. So you want everything under the radar of attack
Hmm.
to be protected against.
True.
So you would want to deploy protection mechanisms. So the
Hmm.
organizations would deploy protection mechanisms, and the
Hmm.
red team is responsible for validating those mechanisms.
Whether working
Now,
effectively or not.
I've used the term blue team before. I've used the term adversary before. Now what is happening is red teaming, because people are convoluting red teaming with pen testing. So a new term. So the way it works in the industry is every 5 years you need a new term, because that's how the products sell. So the
Yeah.
newest term that is there is adversary. So now
Adversity.
adversary emulation or adversary simulation are there.
Yeah.
They're nothing but it's
Breach attack
actually what
simulations and all.
exactly breach attack simulation. They're
Yeah.
simulating an attacker. Now there
Yeah.
are automated tools that are coming up which are doing the attack in an automated manner.
Yeah.
There are tools which are there are companies which are basically doing it manually.
Hmm.
Now these adversary emulation stuff again is mapping these APTs. What they're
True.
doing is now they are offering you an environment which says, okay, you want to test against APT 29, click this button. I will
Hmm.
perform an attack which is similar to APT 29, and
As
I'll
the
tell
same.
you how protected you are. All of this, whatever is being done automatically, can be
Hmm.
done manually.
Hmm.
Whatever is done automatically has always going to have certain set of limitations, which
But
is
Anand,
where
will it
yeah,
take the jobs of red teamers? Like such innovation
see
is there.
the
Don't take me wrong.
important
I'm
bit,
just.
yeah, the important bit to understand is automation is always going to take some jobs. When computers came, they took some jobs.
True.
The difference is those who were sitting crying that they took my job, or those who were like, okay, computer came, I just have to be reskilled in computers and I still have a job.
Yes.
So
How can I
you
be
just
better?
need to be, yeah, you just need to be in that zone where you keep a tab on what's going on in the industry.
Hmm.
So this is where things like Mitre attack is there, or
Hmm.
there are a bunch of different resources that people can actually
Hmm.
leverage.
Hmm.
I think I have a list somewhere. Just give me one sec. I was
Hmm.
making a list. Yeah. So there are a couple of people who are basically doing good content generation around this. Rasta Mouse is one guy who does a lot of sort of red teamer stuff out in public.
mm,
Uh, Now, when it comes to red teaming, the problem is a lot of people only assume that red teaming is Windows attacks.
true.
The reason for that is because most of the time, whenever we are talking about red teaming, we're talking about an organization getting compromised,
Mm,
in which case the attacks are generally on the weakest link, which is
true.
the users. So that's
Mm,
where a large number of organizations are Windows organizations. So Windows
true.
attacks are prominent. It's
Mm,
not that red teaming means Windows only,
Linux,
but
Mac,
yes,
networks, all that.
Windows is a big portion that is there. So you need to be aware of Windows attack scenarios. So AD Security is one website which is there. They talk about Active Directory security a lot, and they come
Mm,
up with those weird scenarios. Like while people were looking at how to configure Azure AD, these
mm,
guys were talking about how can I attack Azure AD from a compromised account on my local AD. And
mm, mm,
then
mm,
once people started understanding that concept, they came up with the idea, okay, I have an account on Azure AD, I don't have anything on the local AD, how can I
mm,
attack a local AD? So
yeah,
they are on the cutting edge of research around this. The way this operates is they are exposed to that environment day in day out.
true.
That's how they are able to skill themselves up. So anything, wherever you want to develop your skills,
Mm,
make it a point to expose yourself. So for example, scripting.
mm,
So there was a point where I wanted to learn how to write in Go.
mm,
The only way I could think of was I have to take a task, and if I take a
mm,
task, I am forcefully going to use Go to do that.
mm,
So I took a weekend, and in that weekend, my task was very simple. I have to write a program which goes
mm,
to a website, downloads the HTML page,
mm,
downloads the headers, and parse the headers and
mm,
look for a string in the HTML page. That's it.
mm,
I could have done that in Python in 30 minutes.
mm,
I knew what modules to use, what to do, how to do.
mm,
I started with I can do this in Python, I want to do this in Go.
mm,
Took me 48 hours,
mm,
but in that time frame, my searches were what is the equivalent of request module in Go? I would
mm,
find something. I'd be like, okay, put it in, let's see how it works. Works, does not works, move to the
uh,
next one.
uh,
And I ended up in 48 hours with a very basic script which
uh,
did my job. But in that
okay.
process, I learned
Uh,
about different modules that are there, how Go ecosystem works,
uh,
what is
uh,
different in Go, what is different in Python, how compiling works, how optimization works. So a question came was like the Go binary that I was getting was about 30 MB in size. I was like, this
mm,
is not good. How come it has 30 MB when I'm only doing like 5 6 commands? So
mm,
I read about, okay, what is static compilation? How is static compilation being done? What can I do to optimize the build? And I ended up
mm.
reducing the size down to I think around 15 MB or so.
Oh,
So all of that required a lot of reading,
mm.
taking notes, going
Your
back
second
to
point.
trying things. So
Your second
reading
point, which
and
is
troubleshooting.
patience and
Exactly.
creativity. Because
That
see, what
comes
can be
back.
done in
Yep.
30 minutes, you accepted a challenge. Okay, if it's 48 hours, I will take 48 hours, get a understanding of a new language, and I can
Yep.
do better in that. And that
Yeah.
shows, the person persistence and patience and creativity in this particular thing, because you don't need to do that, but you did that.
Yeah. I
But
mean,
another,
that's how you're going to learn. Yeah. Yep.
but another, like, and very well, the competition is basically very high in the red teaming and all that. So
Yep.
as I know you very well, you are not a person who are very fond of certification. As I can see your LinkedIn
Yep.
profile also. More than certification, I know I have seen a lot of publications where, and that publication you will be surprised or not, even I will use in my CISSP and in
Okay.
my CSSLP trainings also. Like, okay, this is the white paper and this is how things works, like especially your RAS program and all that. So which you have did cloud pen testing you're talking about. So
Yep.
I've used that reference for my CCSP and all that. So I am
Okay.
also one of your audience, you can say, one of your user. So my thing is that if there's a new aspirant, okay, he did graduation or he doing a graduation, so what is the best way to get a first job? Because nowadays HR is posting like we need a
Yep.
certifications and
Yep.
all that, but there is a lot of company like I know that you're also starting something like that where you don't want to set a certification as a barrier wherever the skill.
Yep.
So
So
how to get a first job? Yeah.
I would rather suggest start from the very beginning. The
Mm,
moment you are, so while you are in college, that's actually the very good time to get started.
mm,
Don't hunt for job. You're in
mm,
college. The
mm,
good thing that you have while you're in college is you only have 6 hours that
mm,
you are supposed to do stuff.
mm,
Everything else is your own time.
mm.
6 hours of college is what you need to give. You are
Yeah.
supposed to do something at that time. Everything else is you can devote however you want.
Mm,
This is the time when you start leveraging things like GitHub Student Pack and
mm.
start building your skills.
Okay.
Parallelly, don't worry about whether what you are writing is
Mm,
something that people have already written. It does not
mm.
matter.
Doesn't matter. Yeah.
Build a website of your own, put content on it,
Mm,
which is for your own sake.
okay.
You are keeping notes for yourself,
Mm,
but you're keeping them in open. So, whatever you learned, whatever you figured out, every single thing that you figured out, make a note of it, make a
okay.
blog post of it. What that
Mm,
does is, on one side, it
mm,
acts as a book for you that this is what I did.
okay.
Two, it keeps enhancing your writing skills. You will keep
Fine.
looking back at your old writing and you'll be like, yeah, I can do it better. I can write better.
True.
And this is something you'll agree. After a
Mm,
certain point, tech is 50% of the job, 50% is communication.
true.
Emails, writing reports, all of this matter. Having
Mm,
written skills, having verbal skills help.
mm,
So if you have
mm,
a blog which is basically talking about all these things that you're doing,
mm,
nowadays a lot of people basically have to. So if you're someone who's doing going towards web application side or network side, you
mm,
might have to end up dealing with code. So
mm.
why shy away? Start dealing with it now. So use GitHub pages for your hosting.
Great.
So
Yeah.
use GitHub account because you are already GitHub Pro with the student pack. You can basically leverage all sorts of GitHub advanced features.
True.
Leverage all of them. Anything that is available to you for free,
Mm,
explore it. What
true.
you're doing is you're building that muscle which allows you to go extra mile and look at
Mm,
things from a different perspective.
true.
If you only work on Windows and you have never seen a Mac or a Linux,
Mm,
the day you get a shell on a Linux box, you'll be like,
mm.
I got a shell, but I don't know what to do. And that's something that you can get rid of if you start exposing yourself to more things.
Yeah.
Besides this, become active in communities. Nowadays, it's far more easier to be part of a community.
Mm.
Earlier, there were barriers like you have to be in a particular city or
City.
things. Uh, how I've started looking at it, all of this is technology is there. You
Mm,
can spend time using it or abusing it or getting
true.
abused.
True.
You can spend time on Facebook or Instagram scrolling things,
Mm.
or you can spend time on Discord asking questions, getting weird answers, or helping others with your answers.
Open for feedback also. Open for
Yep.
feedback.
Yeah.
Like whatever the
Uh,
content you're publishing, you should not be, uh, you know,
exactly.
you should take a
And
feedback in a positive manner. Might be someone has
one,
suggested you.
yeah,
Mm,
one, take a feedback in positive manner. Two, always remember. So this is one word that people start knowing about since I think their first increment, bell curve. So
what is
when
it?
the first increment happens, bell
Yeah.
curve is a word
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
is introduced.
Yeah.
Effectively, what that means is if you take 100% of people, there are going to be 10% of them which are the outliers on both sides, on the
Yes.
best side, on the worst side.
Mm,
Everyone else is in the middle.
mm,
So this is one thing that you have to remember. There are going to be people who are going to be very appreciative of what you do.
true.
There are going to be people who are going to be very sort of dismissive of whatever you do.
Yes.
That's fine. You are a student. You
And
don't
for learning.
have any reputation to protect. You don't have any sort of ego right now. If they say you're wrong, yeah, tell me what can I do.
To
And if
improve
they
that,
tell
yeah.
you something and that helps you improve, fair deal, you got something. If they
True.
say, I'm not going to tell you, that's fine.
Yeah.
I don't wait for your, I'm going to keep doing my own stuff.
Mm,
Now, the profile that you build by putting your content outside, by putting your articles online, by putting your journey outline, and then
mm,
by being part of the communities, you
mm.
start building that connects.
Expose yourself to
Infosec,
the
yeah,
society. Yeah.
Infosec still is a very sort of closed community.
Mm,
What it means is a lot of times recruitments happen before the job is posted.
that's true. Yeah.
I have had people who are recruited before they graduate, or rather the day they say I am graduate, they got a
Graduate.
job offer, because there were 20 people who were seeing this person delivering sessions, talking about their experience, giving people an idea of what they know
Mm,
for past 1.5 year.
yeah.
So
And
they
we
were
trust that.
ready to, yeah, they were ready to offer them a job.
True.
Another thing which a lot of people don't know about, so this is where a bit of programming requirement comes up, but I suggest everyone to apply and everyone to experiment it. Google runs a project called Google Summer of Code. It's
Okay.
a paid internship. So
Mm,
they pay you and they pay big time.
mm.
What I recommend is everyone attempt to be part of Google Summer of Code.
Okay.
What that program does is during your summer break,
Mm,
you work for an organization for a certain task that they may have.
mm.
You get paid by Google. So the
Oh.
organizations are open source companies
Mm,
or open source projects like
mm.
say React OS or Zap or these sort of tools who need people to work on it. So
Okay.
they will have set of tasks that they want to be done.
Mm,
A student will have to look at those tasks and say, yes, I can do this, and propose to the organization, I want to do this. This is how I want to do.
mm.
If the organization selects you, you have 3 months time frame to do that job. And after the first validation, so there are two steps. There is one which is like a midway evaluation, and there's a final evaluation.
Yeah.
At both evaluations, you get paid a certain amount by Google because you
Okay.
have reached that level. So if the
Mm,
organization says yes, the project is going well, you
mm,
get paid.
mm.
So it's a paid internship. You're getting
Oh.
money to work on it.
Wow.
Even if you don't get money,
Mm,
explore these open projects, because these are
mm,
the projects that are there looking for people to help.
mm. And
And
there's
they
no
will
risk for
go,
that.
yeah, there's no risk. They'll go above and beyond to actually help you
Mm,
in learning those skills also.
mm,
So you
mm,
can participate in those open source communities, open source projects,
mm,
and build your muscle around it. By the time you graduate, you should have things to show.
mm,
And these are, so there is always an angle where people say, hey, you want people to do free stuff for everyone else in order
mm,
to get a job.
mm,
What I'm talking about is building your capabilities.
mm,
By the time you graduate,
mm,
it may not be necessary that you need a job.
mm. You
You
might
are
be have a
well
name in the.
versed.
Yeah.
Yeah, you already have a name. There are people lining up to hire you. There are
Yeah.
people lining up to give you money that, hey, you're doing good, take my money, build a project.
True.
Or you may have an idea of your own and
Mm,
you
mm,
want to build something, like for example rips
mm,
tech. So rips
mm,
is a tool which is for PHP static code analysis.
mm,
Rips, first version of Rips was made available on a website, and there was a tool that you could download and you can use.
mm.
That tool was written by a student as part of their PhD thesis.
Okay.
Once they became a fully PhD, they finished their PhD. What
Mm.
they did was they created a company around that product
Correct. Okay.
and they made a commercial product out of it.
Mm,
I think around 2 years time frame, they got acquired by SonarQube because they were
Ah,
the only good PHP code scanning tool.
mm, mm,
So
mm.
you might end up building something which on its own allows you to sustain. So
That's
you
true.
never know where things would take, but the
Mm,
first step is to take the plunge. And doing that while you're in college is going to be
mm,
far more easier. Let's say you are not in college, you've
mm.
graduated, and now
And
you're
experience,
struggling with, yeah,
family is
you have
there.
some experience, family is there, you can't
Mm,
spend a lot of time, and you again then want to get a new job.
mm.
This is where, because now you are an earning person, you already have earning
Yeah,
coming in into your pocket. This is
yeah.
where I will suggest certifications. See,
Okay.
certifications are a shortcut to
Mm,
accelerated learning. If you are going to
okay.
try and find things on your own, you might take 6
Mm,
months time frame. If
mm,
you are with responsibilities, you might take 1 year time frame.
mm,
Joining a 5 days boot camp
mm.
might actually give you that edge over things.
Okay.
So, Prab, I don't know, but it seems like the video is disconnected.
Oh,
Yeah,
just give me a
came
second.
back, came back for me. Just a minute. Let me see if I can turn on the camera. Yeah, it's back now.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So, what I was saying was, in this case, I would suggest using certificates as a shortcut to gathering that input. The
Mm-hmm.
important bit is, do not aim for clearing the certification.
Mm.
What I've generally seen people doing is, I need to get this
Dumps.
certification. Let's clear the certification by hook or crook. I'll get a job. You will get a job, maybe,
Mm.
but you will definitely not learn anything.
And if the hiring
Rather,
manager is like
yeah,
you and me, who basically going to test on the bricks and
yep,
then it will be a
e-
problem.
exactly.
Because
So
CV is
if,
the certification only filtered the CV, but you need to face
yep,
the interview.
yep, the certification is going to get you through that HR filter, maybe.
Mm, mm,
Uh, so that is where what I suggest is, use certifications, use these online learning medias to
mm,
accelerate your learning, because you are boxed with time limitation.
true.
So instead of trying to find out and search for good resources, you can actually
Mm,
use these and get those set of resources and move from there. So
mm,
that's the difference where I would deviate from my saying that, hey, don't put your money in. Don't put your money in the initial stages of your career, because
mm,
certifications are damn expensive. If you talk
yeah.
about OSCP, it costs about $2,000 or something.
Mm, mm,
You don't want to put that much money on the line and then
mm,
figuring out that this is not the field that you want to be in.
mm,
In the first 2 years or 3 years of your career, you should be exploring as many possibilities as you can.
true.
Pick up as many jobs as you can. The idea
Mm,
should be that I am going to figure out what I want to do for the rest of my life.
mm,
And then when you figure out a good job option, then stick around with it.
mm,
For people who are making mid-career switch, what I would recommend is, relook at your own skill set
mm.
and don't go for buzzwords.
Yeah, this is the fantasy word they have created. Okay, Prab, even I had a conversation with one of the person last week also. He want to move into the pen testing or red teaming is because there is a good money and good finances there because you can work as a freelancer. So that was something is a misconception people has that okay, it's not something okay. You can make a money in any field. It's all about the area of interest. That is the
So
most important thing you require. Yeah.
there are two things around it. One, why that perception is there. It's social media has to do a lot to it. What people don't realize is that they
Mm,
see that someone is winning a bounty every single day. So they feel like the world of bounty is very big and
mm,
everyone wins every day. No,
yeah.
a person wins once and then they don't win anything for a very long time. And then they
Mm,
win something again. But for you, because you're looking at 2,000, 3,000 people,
Mm.
everyone winning something, you
Mm.
feel like it's a constant stream. They're
Yeah,
not all winning every day. They're winning
exactly.
some of the days, but combined together, it looks like a big thing.
Yeah.
The angle that I was saying with in terms of relooking at your own skills,
Mm.
if you're someone who has a server background, server admin background,
Mm.
don't look at becoming a pen tester.
Mm.
Become a security auditor. You have
Mm.
far bigger skill set in being a security auditor. Just like I
Exactly.
was talking about a manager who would basically spot things.
Mm.
You have seen so much stuff while configuring your servers. You would
Mm.
basically go and touch a server and you'll tell 500 things that are wrong in that server
Mm.
because you've been there in that field.
Mm.
Leverage it. If you're
Leverage
someone
it.
who's a developer,
Mm.
don't look at becoming a pen tester. That's a waste of your talent.
Mm.
Look at becoming a secure programmer, secure coding programmer, or going towards these specialized areas like, say,
Mm.
HSM programming. So the aim should be, and this is where everyone needs to figure out what are the unique areas where you can target yourself.
Mm.
Don't become a cattle in the whole herd where
Mm.
there is one path where everyone is going. That
Mm.
path is going to get saturated soon. There are so many other areas where you want to go. And
Okay.
so recently I posted this thing. If everyone is learning from the same set of resources,
Huh.
all of you are at the same level. What's
Okay.
unique about you? When I am trying to hire someone, I have
Mm.
200 candidates. All of them look the same, have the same set of certificates, give me
Mm.
the same answer for the same set of questions. Why
Mm.
would I hire you?
True.
What is unique about you?
Mm.
All of these extra stuff that is there, all these experiments that you have done for
Mm.
experienced people, whatever past exposures that you have, leverage that to become that unique identity.
Yeah, instead of just following the,
Exactly. So instead of
rat
saying
race and
I'm
all
a pen tester, you could be far bigger auditor, and you can
that. Yeah.
back that claim like, yeah, you have auditors who are like 5 year experienced. I have
Mm.
20 years experience in configuring these systems. I know ins and out of these systems. I can prove far quickly where
Yeah.
misconfigurations are. So that
That's true.
becomes your USP. But if you are like,
Yeah.
okay, I want to relearn and go into pen testing,
Mm.
then that's a whole different area that you're going in.
True.
But on the other side, if you're a QA person,
Mm.
if you're someone who have been doing functional testing day in, day out, I would definitely suggest to go become a pen tester.
Mm.
You'll be far more performant compared to any pen tester that is there. Because as a QA, you are actually conditioned to think about boundary conditions.
True.
You're conditioned to think about how things can go wrong. You just have to now start thinking how things can go wrong from a security context.
Exactly. What we have implemented, it's okay, but
Yep,
now we need to understand what is the offensive perspective about that implementation.
exactly.
That was a
So,
great
and
point because I've seen a lot of, okay, my juniors are doing this, so let me do the pen testing. Arey, yaar, you
yep,
already have a knowledge on the hardening side. You just need to know how to break it. Simple.
yep.
That give you more add-on.
So, and like I said in the start, there is offense, there is defense, and there is audit.
Hmm.
Pick whatever works for you. Money is there everywhere.
Exactly.
Money is there in programming also. Money is there in non-IT jobs also.
It's like
I
investment
mean,
you're doing. You
exactly. I
can't
mean,
get a
and
immediate
if
returns, but yes, if you spend more time, you
exactly,
have patience, you'll
yeah.
get better returns. Yeah.
Like once you reach a point in your life where you start looking at how salespeople operate,
Hmm.
you end up realizing, okay, they earn a lot more. But then
Yeah.
again, it's a different skill set. It's a different mastery that you have to do
Yes, that's true.
everywhere, wherever you put effort. So it's that, I don't know if it is a saying or a story. So that story where one person digs a hole every day to get
Hmm.
water, whereas the
Hmm.
other person digs a single hole for 20 days and they get water. Both the people basically dug the same distance, but there were
Hmm.
20 holes and this was one single hole. It's
Yeah.
the same
That brings
logic.
more consistency. Yeah.
Yep. You put efforts in that one area and you get to a point where you are more. Important bit is, if you feel like you're underpaid, look up again. Are you feeling you are underpaid because a colleague of yours in a different firm is getting an insane offer, or is it that you are actually getting underpaid?
Yeah.
Everyone with higher roles makes compromises. This
True.
is something no one is going to talk about, but
Hmm.
as you
The
move
fact.
up in the ladder, you
Hmm.
make compromises. You either make compromises in work, or you make compromises in life, or you make
True.
compromises both ways.
Hmm.
Everything looks glamorous from the outside, but the more money is given to you, the more expectations are there from you, and the expectations come with their own set of compromises.
True.
Either you fulfill them, or you basically enjoy the honeymoon phase for 1 year and then go to a new firm and enjoy
Hmm.
another honeymoon phase for there for 1 year. But at one point you get tired of switching, and then you want to
Hmm.
stick around, and that's where
True.
you realize that it's not worth it doing that many jumps or that
Jumps.
many sort of cycles. Stick around, gain experience, and then move.
True.
I'm not going to say that stick around in a company for a very long time frame. Loyalty concept is not a marker right now,
Yeah.
but stick around enough to actually gain something. Don't just be a guest who's an observer and then move to the next firm, just taking that X on your LinkedIn profile, that I am X this, X that, and
Yes.
X this.
Yeah.
That works for entry level jobs, that works for
Hmm.
5 years, 6 years
True. A
in
lot
your
more than that.
career. After that, harsh realities are going to step in.
So Anand, like we can spend like 20 years in this field, like red teaming. Like if I'm in an age of 40 and I'm moving ahead to 60 and 70, can I see this this red teaming as a career, as a pen tester, as a career for next 20 years?
uh, Again, disassociate yourself from the rat race,
Hmm.
focus on your core skill set, pick a
In principle.
specialization. Pick a
Hmm.
specialization within red teaming. Also, there is specializations.
Hmm.
Like, you could be the person who everyone has to come to when they
Hmm.
want a certain AV bypassed.
True.
You know that AV ecosystem inside out.
Hmm.
You can stick around in that job for many years.
Hmm.
You can reach a point where you are basically so much knowledgeable in that area that a
Hmm.
person is just going to pay you to sit around and tell people what to do.
Delegating a task,
You
yeah.
could,
Advisor.
yeah, you could be the architect, you could be the
Hmm.
lead in that zone. You don't need
Hmm.
to manage people nowadays. The startup world has opened up the space where you don't even need to manage people. You could be an
Hmm.
individual contributor at a
Hmm.
very experienced level. This was something that I did not see a lot in Indian firms,
Hmm.
but I've seen a lot, and I have seen this since 2008. My
Hmm.
first firm that I joined, I had two mentors from my client's organization who basically came in and to hand over the job that they were doing.
Hmm.
It was kind of an
Hmm.
offshoring
Hmm.
engagement. But those two
Hmm.
people were like individual contributors. They did not had any people reporting to them. And
Okay.
they were 59, 62 years of age.
Hmm.
They were retiring and they were offloading this to on offshore, because they were
Hmm.
like, yeah, we're not going to continue
Won't.
working. The
True. True.
company wanted to pay them and continue working in that
Hmm.
position, and the company was paying them increments. So it was not
Okay.
like they were stuck with a fixed pay also. So a lot of
Okay.
startups are now offering this also, that you can be an individual contributor, you can be a full-time techie all the
Hmm.
life, and
Hmm.
you are going to get paid. It
Hmm.
will entail a certain bit of interactions,
Hmm.
because it is not going to be that you have to hand code everything,
Hmm.
but you'd most probably be in that zone where you hand code some things, but there's a team working and you guide them and you make stuff happen for them.
So Anand, like if you're comfortable with this, like you're also starting on you already started a new startup. So do you wish to share your experience about your new startup and what is into it to our subscribers?
So you want me to talk about experience of hiring people, or my
No,
company?
no, overall, your
What is my
overall what
company itself?
yeah, what is all about company if you're comfortable.
So The company right now is sort of in a formative stage.
Mm,
The idea is to keep it small, power packed. So that's the
mm,
reason I kept the name. I kept research in the name. So Siphonoid Research is what I kept as the name.
mm,
The research element is going to be a primary constraint.
mm,
So the idea is do random research stuff that I wanted to explore for many years,
mm.
research around those areas, confirm my hypothesis. There's lots of uh, sort of what if scenarios that I have noted down. I want to
Mm.
explore and see what happens. Plus, there
Okay.
are lots of new stuff that are happening.
Mm,
Web3 is an interesting space, IoT is an interesting space, 5G is an interesting space,
mm,
mobile is or handheld devices are an interesting space.
mm.
So the aim is to explore these areas with a small
Okay.
team and then build stuff around it,
Mm,
give out content to open communities, give out content to people so that they can learn and understand things,
mm.
maybe earn money via trainings, maybe do some consulting work around it. But
Okay.
the whole aim is more of around do whatever the hell I want to do
Mm. And
because I want to
and I think
experiment.
you're also driving trainings on some niche projects. So do you wish
Yep.
to share this updates with our subscriber? Might be they want to reach out to you, and
Uh,
because you
so
already said
right
that.
now, yeah. So right now, I'm basically so one area that I've established a training around is attacking and defending Android applications,
Mm,
because what you'll see now is the shifting trend where
mm,
I talk with organizations who are like, "Hey, we have this idea that we are building, and this
mm,
is mobile first.
mm.
They don't have a website. All
Exactly.
they have is if you go to their website, it's a Notion page or a GitHub page, which is it's a static content,
Mm.
and the actual app is only on mobile. So the entire ecosystem is sitting somewhere else. So
Yeah.
how do you attack it? How do you protect it?
Mm.
So that's kind of so the theme that I want to keep with my trainings also is attack and defend. So don't
Okay.
just look at attack, don't just look at defend, but look at
Mm.
how can you attack and how can you defend against it. Look at the
And one thing,
holistic 360 view.
yeah, one thing I would like to share with our subscribers, Anant is also currently handling one of the prestigious project of India, which is called, I think, Internet and Mobile Association of India. So when he's speaking about Android security, it basically makes sense because he was part of the prestigious project, which is basically, handling the mobiles,
So
communication functions
uh,
and all that. Yeah.
to give a context around that, IEMAI is a sort of a government
Yeah.
as it's a semi-government with a partnership of various mobile vendors.
Mm.
It's an association. What I'm doing with them is a project called iCamps. And iCamps is basically a project for citizen assistance around mobile security. So there's a
Wow.
lot that we are working on. Hopefully, in next couple of months, we would be coming out with our application and bunch of other things.
That
The
is
whole
excellent.
idea is to uh, give some sort of guidance, some sort of help to people who are either not security aware or
Mm.
are not in a position to basically spend time dealing with this.
Victim of
So
scam, phishing, and
awareness,
all that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yep,
And
awareness
you're
for
heading the
them, guidance for them.
and
So
you're
I
heading the
am
complete
look.
security project of that, I believe.
So effectively, I am giving them guidance around security.
Wow. Mm,
So they come up with questions around, okay, what could be the problems in the application space?
mm.
What can we do to protect against this? And I'm giving my inputs around that.
Wow, that's great. So any last pointer you would like to share with our
So
aspirants? I'm sure this is a
let
very
me
positive
actually
talk. Yeah. Mm,
let me actually just quickly check the resources that I kept.
mm.
Uh, yeah, I think I have talked about Hack the Box, MITRE
Yeah.
ATT&CK framework. I talked about Rasta Mouse. There's an Indian person named Prashant Mahajan. Uh,
Wow.
he is also known as corrupt in null community. So he
Yeah.
runs a tool called AD Recon, and he has
AD
also now
recon.
developed a cool tool called Azure AD Recon.
Mm,
If you are into Windows side of things, it's a good idea to look at that tool. And when I say look at that tool, look at it from three angles.
mm,
One, what that tool does, how you can
mm,
execute that tool and play around with it.
mm,
It's a good tool for auditors because it gives you a very detailed Excel sheet based report format.
uh, uh,
For someone who's trying to understand AD, look at the internals of it. The code is open. So you
internals,
can
yeah.
look at the source code, how exactly they're doing it, and
Mm,
learn from it. So don't just look at the tool, okay, this is one tool that I can do, but
mm,
understand it. And if you have questions, contact Prashant. He'd be able to help you understanding how this whole thing works. And it's an Indian person doing stuff around Azure AD. So yeah, that's a good pointer to look at. Uh, yeah, couple of things that I did not covered. Uh, yeah, for content around red teaming, for content around offensive stuff, look at conferences, look at say null community archives that are available.
mm,
Also in DEF CON. So DEF CON conference that happens in USA, they have a lot of villages. Now villages, the concept of villages have a small sort of mini conference within the conference.
mm,
Now there are villages for red teaming. So there's a village called Red Team Village. There's a
mm.
village
Abhijit
called
is there, I think.
Adversary Village. So
Abhijit is, I
Abhijit
think,
is handling the
provider.
Adversary Village. Yep.
Yeah.
So there are three villages which Indians are basically leading. There's Adversary Village, there is Cloud Village, and Recon Village.
Mm,
So Adversary Village is one thing which is like the newer term. Red
mm,
Team Village is the older term. There's also
mm,
Blue Team Village.
mm,
Now, why I'm talking about these three is because they put out their content in public.
mm,
So the
mm,
resources that they have basically done as talks and sessions, they make it
mm,
available. If it is
mm,
recording, they make the recording available. If it is
mm.
documents, they make the documents available.
Okay.
Go through them. Start finding the people who are talking about these things. So most
Mm,
of these people who are doing talks there are
mm,
speakers who speak at other conferences also.
mm.
Start looking at what they're doing. Whatever interests you, start following people who are doing similar things.
True.
Twitter, Instagram, whatever. There are people who are sharing good stuff. Follow them,
Mm,
learn from them, use the resources that are available to you for free to
mm.
gain knowledge at your end, and keep documenting it so that others know that you know this.
Okay.
So that I think would be effectively what I would end with.
Well,
Learn
it
stuff
was, yeah.
and document it.
And patience and
Yep.
creativity. That's the most
Yep.
important thing. But thanks, Anand bhai. Matlab, I was expecting, like, I'm sorry I have extended this session,
That's
and
fine. That's fine.
we have discussed for 30 minutes now. It is more than 2 hours. It's about to be 2 hour. I'm really sorry for that. But
That's fine,
some
dude.
pointers
Yeah.
was there which is basically found very interesting. I can bet you on that. You can't find those things on other YouTube content. Great that, okay, we have captured those pointers which give
Yep.
even the better visibility to me. I was even not aware about the Google projects and all that. So
Yep.
one more important thing is that you cannot be a perfect in everything. So you need to have a
Yes.
constant learning on every area.
Yep. Yep.
So, and this is
Uh,
something a great writer for me. Yeah.
are you on the null Discord?
No, I'm not.
Are you a Discord user?
No, I'm not.
Okay. I would suggest you also to get on Discord.
Uh,
There are so many things happening on Discord. There are
uh,
two things that I didn't talk about.
mm.
One is the null Discord server,
If you
and
can
there is
share
another.
that information also, it will be great. If possible,
I
for next 5 minutes.
Yeah, I can do that. Just give me
Yeah.
1 minute. Another interesting resource set is basically a bunch of Discord servers. So the
Wow.
villages I was talking about, most of these villages have Discord presence. DEFCON
Mm,
has a Discord presence.
mm,
Null community, which is from India, has a Discord presence.
mm,
OWASP has a Discord presence.
mm.
Uh, all of these communities have a lot of people talking, interacting on these channels. So
Okay.
you should be involved in those. The way
Mm,
I would suggest is join a Discord server,
mm,
see what kind of discussions are happening. If
mm,
the discussions interest you, if the links that are shared interest you, stick
mm,
around on that server.
mm,
If they don't, if you feel like this is not where I'm going to learn something,
mm.
leave that server. You can join back those servers again,
Okay.
but stick around for servers where you get stuff. The reason I
Okay.
said leave servers that you don't like, because if you
Mm,
keep adding servers, you will
mm,
end up with a lot of servers, and then you will
true.
reach a point where you're like, okay, I don't want to use Discord. It's too
True.
much noise.
True. True.
So only keep channels, only keep servers which you are interested with, but use these resources. Again, Discord is a free resource for you.
Mm.
Use the resource and gain knowledge.
Yeah, there's a lot of free resources out there on
Yep.
it's called Discord and all that. It's all about how you mind your informations, and
Yep.
limited will not give you learning, but okay, it should be quality, it should not be quantity, but it should be, you need to prioritize, how
Yep.
you want
Yep.
to consume the informations and all that. And any
So
other information you would
uh,
like to share on Discord, Nalcon?
so just one thing about null Discord server. So what
Mm,
we've done there is, so if you go on the null community website, there's an option for social links, and from there
mm,
you can get a Discord invite link and just add
okay.
yourself in Discord. uh,
uh,
with Discord, what we've done is we've created sections. So there are
mm,
channels where you can share information around specific topics. So
mm,
like bug bounty, red teaming, pen testing, blue teaming, capture the flag, compliance, enterprise security.
mm.
And what I've done is I've created a beginner's corner. And the
Oh.
whole point of that particular channel was to keep all these links. So stuff like student pack or hack the
Mm,
box, Wallen
mm,
Hub, all of these links we keep sharing there. So whenever a new person joins, we would basically suggest them, hey, look at the beginner's corner. That
mm.
gives you the initial uh, sort of links and references on what to do, how to do.
Oh, oh. So if possible, you can just share me the URL so I can add it in the
I
description
can
box of video.
I can
So
do that. I can
yeah,
do that.
so yeah, we can do that. No issue.
So I'll
So
share the invite link with you so you can add
yeah,
that in the channel. Cool.
sure. Thanks, Anand bhai. Matlab, it is really a great pleasure to have you on this session, and for me at least, it was a great session, and I'm sure when this session is going to be uploaded on YouTube, and it will be a great useful for the aspirants who are looking for the career in red teaming and all that. And I will sure that okay, later on I will try to have you on again on the some other topic which can
No
basically
worries.
give the better visibility to the
Yeah.
aspirants.
Yeah.
And really
Definitely.
thank you for this Friday learning day for us, and we're looking forward for more sessions with you.
Have a nice day, Prab.
Thank you, Anand.
Yeah.
Thank you, bye. Thank you so much.
Yeah.